This? This isn't happening. You what? My voice cracked, trembling as I stared down at the empty envelope on the kitchen counter. Mom didn't even flinch. She just kept folding laundry like nothing happened. I thought it was another credit card offer. I tossed it. My acceptance letter, my ticket out, gone. Vanished into yesterday's trash like it meant nothing. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Columbia University. Full ride. I had dreamed of this since I was 12, staying up late reading psychology textbooks while she screamed on the phone with her boyfriend. But now, gone. The sun streamed into our cluttered living room, painting golden lines across the peeling wallpaper. It looked peaceful, deceiving. I stood frozen. Not angry, not crying, just numb. Mom finally looked up and said, "You're being dramatic, Harper. It's not the end of the world." But to me, it absolutely was. My name is Ava Collins. I was 17 years old when my world quietly cracked, right at the moment it should have bloomed. I grew up in a modest two-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio, with my mother Tracy Collins and my younger brother Liam, who was 10 at the time. My dad? Gone. He left when I was 4, and according to my mom, he didn't leave a trace behind except the debts she still claimed to be paying off a decade later. We didn't talk about him. He was a ghost we weren't allowed to name. Mom worked 2 jobs, front desk at a dental office during the day and stocking shelves at a grocery store at night. You'd think I'd have sympathy for her struggle. And at one point I did. Deep down, I still do. But struggle alone doesn't give someone the right to sabotage another person's future. She had always been tough, sharp-tongued, and weary of the world. "Dreams are for the rich," she used to say, slamming dishes into the sink. "People like us survive. We don't waste time on make-believe." I used to think she was just tired. Now I know better. She was terrified of being left behind. I was the perfect daughter, quiet, obedient, always top of my class. I loved books more than people and had a thing for numbers, for solving problems others ran from. I spent nights tutoring kids at the library just to escape the heavy silence at home. My escape plan had always been the same: get into college, leave Ohio, and never look back. I worked hard, no parties, no boyfriends, no time for rebellion. Just textbooks, scholarship applications, and late-night talks with Ms. Reyes, the librarian who became the closest thing I had to a mentor. "You're meant for more, Ava," she'd say, slipping me scholarship brochures and old SAT prep books. "Don't let this town eat you alive like it did your mom." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until she said it. I clung to her words like a life raft. And when the day came, the day that email from Stanford University arrived, I didn't even open it at school. I printed it out. I wanted to read it at home, at the kitchen table, across from my mom. I wanted her to be proud. "Why didn't you tell me you applied there?" she asked, her voice tight. I didn't want to jinx it. She stared at the letterhead, the Stanford seal gleaming at the top. Her eyes darted over the words, her expression unreadable. "Full ride," she muttered. "Room and board, books included." I nodded, grinning like an idiot. "Mom, I got in. They want me." Silence. Then, without looking up, she folded the letter, creased it with military precision, and slid it into the trash. Just like that. I said no. I thought I'd misheard. "What?" "You heard me." Her voice was low, flat. "You're not going to California. That's across the damn country." "But..." "No," she stood up, tossed her dish rag into the sink. "You think I can raise Liam on my own while you're off playing dorm princess? You wanna run off like your father? Leave me to clean up your mess." "There is no mess," I whispered. "This is my future." Her eyes snapped to mine. Hard, bitter. "Your future is right here, Ava. Family comes first. Always." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even try to dig the letter out of the trash. I just walked to my room, shut the door, and curled up in bed like a ghost of myself. The next morning, the trash was gone. And so was any illusion that my mom wanted me to succeed. That summer was quiet. Ms. Reyes noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. What was I going to tell her? That my own mother had decided my life didn't belong to me? Instead of Stanford, I enrolled in a local community college. I took night classes and worked during the day at a tech repair kiosk at the mall. I saved every dollar I could, slowly stitching together a different version of the future, one I didn't need her permission for. It wasn't all pain, though. There were people who showed up when she disappeared. Jordan, my best friend since 10th grade, would sneak me peanut butter cookies and let me study in his basement when things got too tense at home. Ms. Reyes never stopped asking about my plans, even when I gave her vague half-truths. And I found little sparks of joy in tutoring middle schoolers, seeing that light in their eyes when they finally got it. By 20, I was freelancing in cybersecurity. By 22, I launched my own business, BiteGuard Solutions, focused on digital privacy for small businesses. It started small, but within 2 years, I had 5 full-time employees and contracts with firms across 3 states. I moved out quietly. No big fight. Just a note on the kitchen table and enough groceries in the fridge to last a week. Liam hugged me tight. He was 13 by then and already knew too much for his age. "I'll come visit," he whispered. "Promise me you'll apply to whatever school you want," I said. "Don't ask for permission." He nodded. For a while, I didn't see my mother at all. Then came the phone call. It was late, around 11:30 p.m. Her voice was strained, panicked. "Liam's in the hospital." I drove like a maniac, my heart in my throat. He'd fallen during football practice. Nothing life-threatening, thank God, but he needed an MRI and short-term physical therapy. My mother didn't have the money or insurance. "I'll cover it," I said, without hesitation. She didn't thank me. She never does. From that point forward, the pattern began. Bills late? Ava pays. Rent short? Ava pays. Car repairs? Groceries? Ava, Ava, Ava. Each time, I told myself I was doing it for Liam. He deserved a chance, even if I never got mine. But deep down, resentment grew like weeds in my gut. She still hadn't acknowledged what she did. Not once. Not a single apology. She even had the gall to say once at a barbecue, "Ava always had a good head for business." She learned it from watching me budget all those years. I nearly choked on my drink. Still, I stayed silent. Until the day I found the box in her attic. Liam had texted me, "Can you grab my cleats from Mom's house?" I stopped by while she was at work. I remembered she stored out-of-season stuff in the attic and figured I'd check there. That's when I found it. A worn-out banker's box, labeled Ava Old. Inside were faded report cards, school essays, and, folded in the very same creases, my Stanford acceptance letter. She hadn't thrown it out. She'd kept it, like a trophy, like a secret victory. I sat down right there on the dusty wooden floor, letter in hand, shaking. My breath was shallow. My ears were ringing. She didn't destroy it because it meant nothing. She destroyed it because it meant everything. Because it proved I could leave. And she couldn't stand the thought. When I left that attic, I wasn't the same girl anymore. I was a woman with something to prove and something to take back. 3 months after the devastating discovery that my mother had thrown away my acceptance letter to Stanford, I found myself sitting quietly in my apartment in downtown Chicago, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. The ache of betrayal hadn't faded, but something else had begun to grow in its place: determination. I didn't tell my mother I knew. Not yet. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I was working 2 jobs, one as a waitress at a rooftop restaurant and another in a tiny law office doing menial admin work. The office manager, a sharp, snappy woman named Miss Peterson, noticed how quickly I picked up on the legal documents and procedures. She started leaving small notes for me. Impressive summary on the Jefferson brief. "You have a good eye." Or, "You sure you're not secretly in law school?" It was the first time someone noticed my potential without conditions, without guilt. One night, after a long shift at the restaurant, I got home and pulled out a beat-up folder I had buried in a drawer. Inside was the copy of my acceptance email to Stanford that I had dug out from my old Yahoo account, the one I hadn't used in years. And right beneath it, the digital printout of a full-ride scholarship offer that would have covered every cent. Stanford believed in me. They still might. That night, I wrote to the admissions office. I explained what had happened. I included documentation, my scholarship letter, old essays, teacher recommendations, and a statement about what had happened with my mother. I didn't blame her outright. I just laid out the facts. 2 weeks passed. Then came the email. Dear Ms. Taylor, after reviewing your case and your exceptional academic history, we would like to extend to you a place in our incoming spring cohort under the same full-ride conditions previously offered. Welcome to Stanford. I stared at the screen for several long minutes. Tears blurred the words until they no longer made sense. I was in. I was actually in. But I didn't tell my mother. Not yet. I packed my bags, sublet my apartment, and took a Greyhound to Palo Alto. I worked part-time, took evening classes, and hustled harder than I ever had in my life. For the first time, my world wasn't filtered through my mother's fear or resentment. It was mine. 3 years later, I graduated with honors. Now, I stood across from my mother's house, a red brick two-story in the suburbs. It looked just as it did the day she held up that crumpled letter and said, "Not under my roof." Only now, the house was about to be under my name. I walked up the driveway wearing a gray pantsuit, heels clicking against the concrete. I had flown in from D.C., where I had just been promoted to associate counsel at a nonprofit that protected students from academic discrimination and parental coercion. I bought the house in full, with cash. Quietly, through a blind trust. She didn't know. Yet. When she opened the door and saw me, her face flickered with something complicated. Surprise, confusion, and embarrassment? "Harper," she said. "Hi, Mom. You look different." "I feel different," I replied with a calm smile. "Can we talk?" We sat in the same kitchen where she once threw away my future. The wallpaper was still peeling, and the fridge still groaned at night, but the air between us was thicker now. She made tea. I didn't touch mine. "I heard you were in California," she began. "Your sister told me something about you getting a degree?" "I graduated from Stanford." She paused. "But I never saw the—" She cut herself off. "That's right," I said, leaning forward slightly. "Because you threw the letter away." Her lips parted, but she said nothing. "I found the email. I reapplied. They took me back. Full scholarship. No thanks to you. I didn't think you were ready." "No," I interrupted, voice steady. "You didn't think I should be more successful than you. That's what this has always been about." Her silence confirmed it more than any words ever could. Then I stood and reached into my bag, pulling out a slim manila folder. I slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked cautiously. "Deed transfer. The house is paid in full. It's yours to live in, under one condition. You follow the rules of the new lease agreement. Utilities are covered. You'll get a monthly allowance for food and upkeep. But if I see you interfere in any of my younger cousin's academic paths the way you did with mine, the house reverts." Her mouth fell open. "I don't understand. You don't have to. Just know that I own this house now. And everything you tried to stop me from becoming, I became it anyway." I stood, adjusted my blazer, and walked to the door. She followed, stumbling over her words. "Wait, so you're funding me now?" I looked back at her unflinching. "Yeah, Mom. I am." Then I walked out the door, the soft wind catching my hair like it always used to when I was little, except this time, I wasn't running away. I was walking into power. I didn't want it to go this way. But when my mother stood in the living room, arms folded, chin high, still pretending like nothing she ever did was wrong, it was clear we were long past peace talks. It started with a letter. A letter from Columbia University's Alumni Foundation. Not addressed to her, of course. To me. Miss Ava Monroe, class of 2021. It read on the front. My mother snatched it off the counter the moment she saw the return address. "What is this?" she hissed, eyes narrowing. I took it gently from her. "It's just a newsletter. I get them all the time." "Why?" she demanded, as if me receiving mail from the college that accepted me, despite her sabotage, was offensive. "Because I'm an alum." She threw her hands up like I'd slapped her. There you go again. Always acting like you're better than me. I never said that. You don't have to. Her voice curled with bitterness. It's in your tone. In the way you walk around here like you're some big shot, waving your money around like some show-off. My gaze dropped to the $2,000 check I'd written her last week to cover the new roof. Her roof. I've never waved anything, I said quietly. I'm just trying to help. That's all I've ever tried to do. That was the spark. She turned on me like a storm. No. You're trying to prove I was wrong. That I'm some horrible mother, some monster. Well, maybe I did throw out that letter, but I knew it was best for you. College would have ruined you. Mom, I whispered. I got into Columbia. On scholarship. You didn't even read the letter. I didn't have to. You were just a kid. You needed direction. You were emotional after your father died. You wanted to run away. That word. Emotional. Every time I brought up her betrayal, she painted me as hysterical. It was her go-to defense. I folded my arms and looked her in the eye. I would have respected it more if you'd just said you were scared. She flinched. For the first time, something honest flickered across her face. Not rage. Not superiority. But fear. I was scared, she finally admitted. After your father died, everything was falling apart. I couldn't afford to lose you too. So you destroyed the only chance I had to escape. No, she said quickly. I was keeping you safe. I shook my head. You were keeping me small. And that was when my younger brother, Marcus, walked into the room. Perfect timing. He was the golden child. Always had been. Despite the fact that I was the one picking up bills and planning for his college fund, he was the one who got the grace, the excuses, the affection. Whoa, Marcus said, eyes darting between us. What's going on? I hesitated. My mother pounced. She's ungrateful. That's what's going on. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Ungrateful? You're welcome for the electric bill last month. Marcus blinked. You paid that? He asked quietly. Of course she did, Mom snapped. That's what you do when you're successful, Ava. You give back. No, I said. That's what you do when your mother takes away your future and still expects you to save her. Marcus stepped closer. What does she mean? You threw away her acceptance letter? Mom looked cornered now. She's exaggerating. That school wasn't good for her. I cut in. Marcus, I applied to Columbia. I got in. Full scholarship. Mom never told me. She took the letter, hid it, and lied to my face. I found it years later stuffed under her dresser. His jaw dropped. That's why you went to community college instead? I nodded. He looked back at her. Mom, that's messed up. The betrayal in his voice cracked something in her. She sank onto the couch like all the air had been knocked out of her. I didn't want her to leave me. I did leave, I said. Eventually. After I worked 3 jobs to pay for it myself. Marcus shook his head. You let her suffer through that? I did what I had to do, she muttered, staring into space. The silence after that was heavy. That night, I sat in my old bedroom, now turned into her craft room, and stared at the walls. The posters were gone, but the scars in the drywall from the thumbtacks remained. That room once held my dreams. Now it held tubs of fake flowers. Later, Marcus knocked and came in. She told me everything, he said quietly. I didn't know. I know, I replied. He sat down on the edge of the bed. She always told me you dropped out. Said you couldn't handle the pressure. Said you gave up. I felt my throat tighten. I've never given up on anything in my life. I know that now. He leaned forward. Why do you keep helping her? I shrugged. Because I know what it feels like to have no one. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Not even her. He went silent for a moment. You're a better person than me. No, I said. Just someone who learned the hard way. The next morning, my mother came to my room. She didn't knock. Your brother's taking my side, she said stiffly. I didn't look up from my laptop. No, he's waking up. I just want to move on from this, she said. I closed the laptop. Moving on means accepting what you did, I said. She crossed her arms. I said I was scared. Being scared is not a license to destroy your child's future. She turned to go. Oh, and Mom? I called after her. About the bills, I'm not covering them anymore.
She paused, stiffened. What?
You want help? You sign over the house to my name. Legally. I'll manage it like a landlord. You'll pay reduced rent and utilities. But I'm not your personal ATM anymore. You can't. I can. And I will. This is me setting boundaries. You can either accept my help with dignity, or keep living in denial and find someone else to fund your delusions. Her face flushed with rage. You wouldn't have anything without me. I stood. Actually, I have everything despite you. She stormed out. Over the next few days, everything escalated. She called her sister, trying to shame me. Aunt Veronica called me. Your mama says you're trying to take her house. I sighed. I'm trying to give her options. She just doesn't like being told the rules anymore. A pause. You sound just like your daddy, she finally said. He never let anyone walk over him either. And just like that, I had a surprising new ally. Veronica offered to mediate. By the following week, my mother unwillingly agreed to the new terms. I became the legal owner of the house. She paid a reduced rent, and the emotional distance between us grew into a full mile. But oddly, that space allowed honesty. She started seeing a therapist. Marcus and I talked more than we ever had. He even apologized. You know, I believed her, he said. All those years, I thought you were dramatic. I know, I said. But now you know the truth. He nodded. You're amazing, Ava. I didn't reply. I just smiled. I stood at the kitchen island, watching the sun filter through the blinds, painting golden lines across the marble. The same kitchen where I used to scrub dishes while my mother told me dreams were for the rich and spoiled. It looked different now, quiet, clean, not the battlefield it once was. Do you want coffee? I asked calmly. Across the table, Mom nodded, silent. She looked tired, older than I remembered. Maybe not in years, but in soul. Life has a way of aging people who fight everyone but themselves. I poured her a cup. No words yet, just the clink of ceramic and the distant hum of birds outside. I paid off the final balance of the medical bills, I said finally. Her hand jerked slightly on the mug. You didn't have to do that. No, I replied, stirring my own coffee. But I wanted to. Not out of obligation. Not out of guilt. I had grown past those things. This was about power, peace, and the choice to be who I always wanted to be, free from her approval. 3 months ago, after the confrontation in my apartment, where I showed her the acceptance letter she threw away, the email trails I kept, and the offer letters I had received after graduating, my world shifted. So did hers. She hadn't said anything as I calmly packed her things into boxes, not throwing her out, but moving her to the guest unit I had renovated. Rent-free, but with terms. I'll cover your bills, I told her. But the main house is mine now. There was no fight. Just a numb nod. Something in her eyes cracked that day. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt closure. I had been offering mentorship at a local girls' community center ever since. A quiet room full of brown-skinned, bright-eyed teens who still believed college was a luxury. I saw myself in them, Amara, age 17, holding an acceptance letter, trembling with hope. Don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of, I told them. They'll lie, especially if they're afraid of your light. One of the girls, Brielle, had hugged me after the workshop. She didn't have much family support, but her dreams were loud. I started funding her SAT prep classes and invited her to shadow me during campus tours. Mom watched this from afar. She'd see Brielle come over, see me walk into the community with groceries for my men's families.
She didn't say anything.
But I caught her once, eyes watering at the door, hearing Brielle call me Miss Amara like I was someone to aspire to. Back in the kitchen, I sat across from her now. You know, she finally said, voice rough like she hadn't spoken in a while. I did what I thought was best. You were always too sensitive. Too dream-heavy. I know. I nodded. And you were scared. I get that now. She blinked, surprised. You do.
Yes.
But fear isn't love. You controlled what you didn't understand. She looked down. I didn't think it would hurt you that much. You didn't see me enough to notice how hurt I already was, I replied softly. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't sharp, it was healing. I'm sorry, she whispered. And maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe it was too late. But it was something. And for me, something was a miracle. That weekend, I took her to Brielle's school showcase. Brielle performed a spoken-word piece about generational pain and rising above shame. Mom sat beside me, quiet, but I saw her wipe her eyes with the side of her coat sleeve. When Brielle hugged me afterward, Mom watched it all with a softened face. She reminds me of you, she said later in the car.
She is me, I said.
Before I was silence. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about boundaries and building. I no longer needed to prove anything. My success was its own proof. My apartment, my career, the young women I mentored, the life I lived, all formed the foundation of something she never gave me, self-worth. The following Monday, she handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. My first rent payment, she said. I got a part-time job at the local library. Just shelving and some desk work. But I want to contribute. I opened the envelope. Inside was a modest amount, but more than the money, it carried intention, a willingness to show up. You don't have to prove anything to me, I said. I know, she replied. I want to prove it to myself. Later that evening, I sat on the balcony, overlooking the street. A soft summer breeze ran through my locks as the city lights blinked below. I thought about the version of me that sobbed in the high school bathroom, acceptance letter gone. The version that blamed herself for never being good enough. The girl who once thought she'd have to shrink just to survive. But I didn't shrink. I built. And now, I carried both my past and my power. Not like weights, but like wings. It had been exactly 7 months since that stormy night when I walked out of my mother's house for the last time. Today, the sun poured through the open windows of my new apartment in Austin, Texas. The air smelled like lavender from the diffuser I kept near my writing desk, and soft jazz floated from the speakers. I stood on my balcony, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "She believed she could, so she did." It had been a gift from Professor Winston, the very professor from Howard who had personally called to apologize after learning what had happened with my acceptance letter. I didn't return to Howard. That chapter had closed, but something else had opened in its place. With the internship I fought for tooth and nail at a local tech incubator, followed by a permanent offer 6 weeks later, I had carved out something new. Something mine. I was now the youngest Black woman running operations for a tech accelerator that exclusively helped underrepresented founders. We called it Phoenix Foundry. Every day, I sat across from kids who reminded me of myself, scared, overlooked, and burning with dreams. Your story matters, I told them. Don't let anyone rewrite it. The apartment buzzed with quiet energy. There were succulents on the windowsill, a gold-framed vision board on the wall, and a picture of my late Grandma Lucille near the front door. I touched it lightly before walking over to the kitchen to plate up the food I'd made. Roasted salmon, brown rice, sautéed kale. It wasn't for me. It was for her. My mom. Yes, we still talked. But only when I initiated it. And only on my terms. After everything. After she admitted, in a moment of guilt and ugly tears, that she had thrown my acceptance letter away. After the counseling, the confrontation, and the bitter silence that followed for 4 straight months, I made a choice. I would pay her bills. I would not be cruel. I would not withhold. But I would never forget. I know I don't deserve this, she had said when I first transferred money to cover her rent. I don't know how you can still do this after what I did. And I told her plainly, because I don't want to become what hurt me. We weren't close. We probably never would be. But she had heat in her apartment and food on her table because her daughter, whom she tried to sabotage, chose healing over hate. At 5 p.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't my mom. It was Yvette, my best friend since 7th grade. The only one who'd never stopped believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. She walked in carrying a basket full of sunflowers and a box wrapped in gold paper. "What's this?" I asked. Yvette beamed. "Open it." Inside was a small, engraved plaque. Dr. Amira Ellis, Director, Phoenix Foundry, for rising from what tried to burn you. My breath caught. "I'm not a doctor yet," I said with a tearful laugh. "Yet," she winked. "But you will be." Because now I was applying to grad schools. On my terms. With full control of my own mail, my own fate, my own fire. We sat down to eat, and the evening air grew cooler. As we laughed over memories, I glanced over at Grandma Lucille's photo again. The same words she once told me came back, wrapping themselves around my heart like a prayer. "Baby, let the fire build you, not break you." Later that night, after Yvette had gone and the city had quieted down, I stepped out onto the balcony again. Lights sparkled across the skyline. Somewhere in the distance, music drifted up from a street performer's saxophone. And I breathed in peace. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need recognition. Because I had built something sacred. Myself. And that was worth more than any apology my mother could ever offer. Still, once a month, without fail, I sent her the money. Not because she earned it, but because I had.
And that was enough.